This week I have an absolute treat for you Fuji lovers. I'll be comparing the print quality between the high resolution 40 megapixel sensor and the 26 megapixel sensor. Be sure to watch until the end because there's a ton of info to take away from today's video. What a beautifully calm morning it is down here in Tenby, absolutely beautiful. I'm just waiting for the sun to rise, and I've got both cameras set up here on tripods next to each other to make changing the lenses over really quick and simple. So literally I can just swap the lenses over as I take my series of shots as the light changes, you know. So I think that just keeps everything simple. Both cameras are at f7.1 ISO 160, and I'm just adjusting my shutter speed as required as the light changes to keep an evenly balanced exposure and to make sure my highlights don't clip as well, because the sun's rising over there on the left hand side of the frame, which is pretty cool. Got some cool details in the sky, some really good cloud formations. We just do with some light here in the bay, lighting up the fronts of these buildings. Now I specifically chose this spot this morning because I wanted to show texture and detail in the image, and I think these buildings and this harbour here really show that off. So it'd be really interesting to see how we can compare these two images, these two cameras in the print when we get back. So I'm going to continue to shoot this over the next 15-20 minutes or so as the light changes, and then we'll get back to the office, print some images out and take a detailed look and blow some images up as well to see how these two compare. So I recently picked up the Red Badge 16-55 f2.8 to go along with my XH2, and it was a lens I've wanted to own for some time, but it felt like it didn't really suit the XT line of cameras that I was using. I first tested it out back in the day when I had my XT2, but it didn't feel like it really balanced that well, especially with the smaller grip. But it feels great with the XH2 though, even though it is a little bit weightier. So this was the first outing with this setup and one of the reasons I wanted to make this video. Actually, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see, a comparison video between the 16-55 and the 18-55 on the new 40 megapixel sensor. If enough people are interested, I'll definitely try and put that video together soon, so let me know. So let's quickly take a look at these photos before we go through the print comparisons, because I've got a good selection of images taken, some in good light, some in bad light, which will really put this setup to the test. The first image of the morning was this wide shot, a tricky scene to shoot in one image. Usually I would bracket this as to preserve more shadow detail, but I thought it would be great to see how the two sensors compare when the raw file is pushed within an inch of its life, if you like. As you can see from the settings, I've pretty much pushed this as far as I dare. There's definitely some noise in the shadows on the screen, so it'll be really interesting to see how the two sensors compare in the final print. Next, I zoomed in a fair bit, as this was easier to gain a more balanced exposure without the bright area of the sunlight in the previous shot. As you can see by my edits, I've opened the shadows a bit, added some contrast, and I feel this is more typical of a landscape edit. So we should see better detail in the shot, especially on paper. Finally, I wanted to take a shot of the buildings in good light, so I waited for a while until the sun was hitting the buildings on the right. I zoomed into 55mm and grabbed this image, which has a very small amount of editing applied again, just a small amount of shadow lift, some contrast and saturation. I applied my usual sharpening in Photoshop to all of the images. So when I'm looking at these images on my screen, I really do struggle to see any difference in terms of detail between the two sensors. And I'm really hoping we can see something different when we look at the images on paper. I should mention at this point that for all of the photos, I had the camera in manual mode, including manual focus on the same point in every image, and use the 2-second timer to eradicate any kind of camera shake. I also had IBIS turned off. The tripods were positioned on concrete and there was next to no wind where I was positioned. Before we take a look at the prints, here's a quick message from the sponsor of this week's video, Artlist Max. Artlist have been an integral part of my business for over 5 years now, providing me with music, sound effects and video footage for this channel and for my professional client work. From creating commercial projects to posting content on your favourite social media platform, Artlist has you covered with a package that's right for you. With Artlist Max, you can take full advantage of everything Artlist has on offer all under one roof. Think of it as the all-in-one platform for content creation, providing you with the best music, sound effects, video footage, templates, plugins and software for your next project. Say you're a photographer that's just starting out with video creation, well, Artlist even has their own video editing software, meaning you can create your own videos, build your sound design and export the final film, all for one fee. Finding your favourite music, soundbite or video clip couldn't be easier with the exceptional search features built into the Artlist platform. Choose the similar songs filter, sort by vocals, BPM or duration, or jump over to the Spotlight page to browse different collections curated by trending themes. Artlist makes it super easy to find the perfect asset for your next project. I love the ability to be able to build a collection of music and then share the collection with my clients for their approval. This saves me time and money and ensures my clients are happy with the final product. Be sure to check out Artlist Max for your next project, and when you sign up by clicking the link in the description, you'll receive an extra 2 months free with any annual subscription plan. Right, let's take a look at these prints, shall we? And be sure to stick around until the end because the results are very interesting indeed. So just briefly, my printer over here is a professional Canon printer. It's the Pixma Pro 10S, which prints up to A3+, and I'm using Canon Professional inks with PhotoSpeed's premium photo paper, which is Platinum Etching 285. It's definitely my favourite photo paper of all time and creates immaculate prints. So first up, I printed this wide shot of the town on A3 paper, and the print is 16 inches wide, so well below the 20 and 25 inches wide that the two sensors have at 300 dpi. This blew my mind actually. Considering how far I pushed this raw file, the level of detail is absolutely amazing in both shots, and as you would expect, it's difficult to see a difference. This is mainly due to the fact that they are both well within their size limits for their native print size. So I cropped out a smaller section of the photo. I printed this crop here on A4 to save wasting materials, and this crop printed at this size would be equivalent to printing a 25.76 inch print, which is the width of the native XH2's print dimensions at 300 dpi. This means that the XT3 print which we've got here is approximately 1.25 times wider than the native print size of 20.8 inches, which is that of the Fuji X-T3. If I'm viewing these images at about 18 inches from the paper, they both look identical. It's only when I get within a foot of the paper that I can just about make out a few more details in the XH2's file. You know, in the windows, the railings and the glazing bars. Considering how much I pushed both of these files, there's no visible grain or noise and both look super clean. Next up we have, which is a more typical landscape photography edit, I cropped into the image and printed this section on A4 paper to give the native print size of 25.76 inches at 300 dpi, which is the native print size of the XH2. Again, 18 inches from the print, there's no visible difference, both look absolutely amazing. So much detail, just stunning quality from both. When I get into less than a foot away from the print, I see more detail in the XH2, but it's very, very marginal. You're probably not going to see any difference here on the screen when I'm holding these prints up. So really, I think you're probably just going to have to take my findings as gospel. But you know, it is what it is. So I gave these two prints, the XH2 and the XT3, to my wife for her to examine really close up to see if she could see any difference, and she couldn't. So I think these fine details are only going to be noticeable to the trained eye, you know, to us photographers. So both of these two images were shot in flat light. So let's take a look at a more blown up version of the buildings upon the right hand side of the town in good light. And this is where we start to see things slightly clearer. So this crop, when printed on A4, will make a whopping print size of 64 inches wide. Yes, absolutely massive. This is approximately 2.5 times wider than the XH2's native resolution and 3 times wider than the XT3's. 64 inches is 1.63 meters. It's about the width of my arms, just to give you an idea. So it's a massive print. Now, if I stand about 3 foot or 1 meter back from both of these prints, they look identical. And I would suggest that because the print size is so big, that you probably want to stand further back than this to really enjoy the photo as a whole. Now, when you come closer to about 2.5 feet, 0.8 meters, you start to see things a little bit differently. Things start to improve in the XH2's print. The detail in the railings start to become a little bit more apparent. When you get into less than 2 feet, you can see even more detail in the railings. On the XT3 file, the railings here are a little bit smudged, where on the XH2 file, you can just about make out the individual lines. The roof tiles look a little bit more refined, and the vertical railings on the roof are just about visible, whereas on the X-T3 they aren't. So after comparing all of these prints, my conclusion is at the native print size or less, you'll see no difference in detail between the two sensors. If you're blowing your images up beyond 4 feet or more, then things get a touch more noticeable if you're viewing at a really close distance. I don't think the difference between the two sensors is that noticeable. We're talking really tiny amounts of detail, but there is a difference though, so I guess that's a win for the 40 megapixel sensor. If you're interested in how I customize my camera settings and function buttons, be sure to check out this video over here where I run through the whole setup. A big thanks to Artlist Max for sponsoring this video, and until next week, take care and I'll see you soon.